So as stated before, I did not like the first 2 episodes of Wandavision. I felt like they were just collections of Easter eggs instead of actual narrative, but it's shaped up substantially. And the last few weeks are what the format really always should have been, in my opinion. And I said I'd own it, and now I am. It's gotten a lot better. I like it now. But what it did this week, wowzers. Spoilers follow from here on out, but we're unpacking some of the huge implications for the future as has been seeded in WandaVision. I'm Dan Umpton, and this is the Doomcast. So this is your last warning on spoilers, and if you haven't watched any of WandaVision, or especially not the last 2 episodes, now is the time to bounce, dog. Alright, if you're still with me. So this week, 2 major reveals reinforce what I think is also a third from last week. First, the obvious, well, maybe not so obvious, Wanda's brother Pietro shows up. But it's Evan Peters, the guy who plays Pietro, who was unquestionably a mutant from the X-Men Fox films. Just to be clear, it wasn't apparent, I don't think, to everybody immediately. That is the same character as her brother who died in Age of Ultron, Quicksilver. Wasn't immediately apparent to my wife and some other people I talked to. So that's it, right? I mean, clearly they're just fusing the X-Men films with the MCU and definitively introducing mutants. Yeah, I mean, there's clearly no other way that they aren't. And it's always been a wonder to me how Quicksilver ended up with Fox and Scarlet Witch somehow ended up with Marvel Disney, even though they both started out with both characters in the films. But this definitely opens the door for the X-Men and peripheral X-Men characters, literally opens the door for them into the larger shared film franchise, which probably also reinforces the notion that Wanda has some degree of villain role in Doctor Strange 2, and that if that is true, then Catherine Hahn is Agatha Harkness, and she probably is involved in that as well. More on that later. Also, does this thing mean that Magneto is her dad in the MCU as well? That's wild to think about. But the second thing is Monica Rambeau's X-rays, which were entirely blank, as in overexposed. Which is important because Monica Rambeau in comics is both the first Captain Marvel, who's female, and also later Photon, which is her mother's call sign in the MCU. Her power is that she's living light energy, and as fast, as bright, and powerful as that implies. Now, if that power is woken up at this point, game on. So I mentioned Agatha Harkness before. Well, she was originally introduced in comics as Franklin Richards' nanny. Yes, that is to say, Reed and Sue Richards' son, Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman of the Fantastic Four specifically. And Franklin, notably, is a mutant. Yes. Just like Quicksilver, just like Wanda, just like Cyclops and Wolverine. Now this wouldn't necessarily be important as a fact, but shout out to fellow henchman Ryan Christopher Morrison for catching that dick dude from S.W.O.R.D. in episode 3 mentioned no more manned missions to space after their first team. Now that makes me wonder exactly who their first team was, and if Johnny and Ben Grimm were with Sue and Reed Richards at the time in space. I see people calling for Jimmy Woo in a spin-off in the style of the X-Files, solving weird mysteries, but that is literally what the Fantastic Four started out as. Detectives of the weird and the mysterious, so I'm kind of torn. I really do want to see more Jimmy Woo in more stuff, and I especially want him to turn into the badass super spy that he is in Agents of Atlas. But if they were going to make a Kat Dennings and Jimmy Woo spin-off with Randall Park, where they did go, like, I would call it Journey into Mystery. Now, I admit, I was pretty astonished that this show and the format were chosen to head up Phase 4, especially with the first 2 episodes, especially with the 2 movies that were supposed to have happened before this and haven't dropped due to the pandemic. I get it now, and frankly, this makes me pretty excited about things in the future. But wow, clearly the stakes do go up every episode with this show, with the exception of the first 2 episodes. Now, thanks for watching, and enjoy the next episode of the show that's clearly gotten a lot better. I admit it. Thanks everybody for watching. This has been the Doomcast. We'll see you next week.